They called it the shot heard around the world. A sound that ripped through the London sky and echoed across 7 continents. The crack of willow on leather. A punctuation mark at the end of an impossible sentence. But for one man, watching on a flickering screen 1,000 miles away in Ouagadougou, it wasn't the sound of a cricket bat he heard. It was the echo of a promise. The echo of a forgotten moment in a rain-slicked alleyway that inextricably linked a football prodigy from Burkina Faso to a cricket captain from South Africa. This isn't the story of how South Africa won the World Test Championship. This is the story of why that victory truly, fundamentally, mattered. You think you know what a hero looks like? You're about to find out you're wrong. Hit that subscribe button right now, and do not move. Because the truth behind this trophy is infinitely more powerful than the win itself. The world saw a champion, fist clenched, face etched in euphoric release. I saw the man from that rainy Tuesday. They saw the confident smile, hoisting a golden mace that weighed less than the burden he'd carried for a decade. I saw the tired eyes that had stared down a universe of doubt and asked for absolutely nothing in return. The commentators screamed about a captain who had conquered the world. But I cheered for the quiet giant who, in a moment of complete anonymity, taught me that your value is never measured by the volume of the crowd. It is measured only by the integrity of your silence. And his silence, on that forgotten day, and on this glorious one, his silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Lords, the home of cricket. But on this day, it was a cathedral of anxiety. Every single soul in the stands, from the MCC members in their bacon and egg ties to the traveling South African fans with hope tattooed on their hearts, was holding their breath. It was more than a game. It had always been more than a game for them. For South Africa, a nation perpetually wrestling with its own reflection, sport is the crucible where identity is forged and broken. And for years, it felt like it was only ever broken. The opponent was Australia. Not just a team, but a dynasty. An empire of sledges and stairs, of relentless, suffocating pressure. They didn't just play cricket, they waged psychological warfare. And for 5 grueling days, they had thrown everything they had at the Proteas. The score was impossibly tight. Wickets had fallen. Nerves were shredded, scattered across the hallowed turf like confetti at a funeral. And in the center of it all stood one man. Temba Bavuma. 5 feet, 4 inches of condensed pressure. The captain. The lightning rod. The man who, for his entire career, had been told he wasn't good enough. Not tall enough. Not powerful enough. His technique, dissected and derided. His captaincy, questioned in every newspaper from Cape Town to Johannesburg. He was the symbol of a divisive policy to some, a token appointment. To others, a beacon of hope. But to almost everyone, he was the underdog. He was always the underdog. He stood at the crease, the weight of 60 million people on his shoulders. A weight that would have crushed lesser men. A weight that had crushed lesser men. The Australian captain, a snarling predator, moved his fielders in. The circle of white uniforms tightened like a noose. Every man was a piranha, smelling blood. The whispers started. The sledges. You could feel the venom even through the television screen. He's gonna choke. Not got it in him. Look at his eyes. He's terrified. Bavuma stood still. He tapped his bat. Twice. He looked down the pitch, not at the bowler, but through him. He was in his own world. A world forged by years of this. Years of the whispers. Years of the doubts. Years of looking in the mirror and seeing not just a cricketer, but the embodiment of a nation's complex, painful, hopeful dream. The bowler began his run-up. A thunderous, rhythmic pounding that grew louder and louder. The crowd noise dissolved into a single high-pitched hum. Time itself seemed to stretch and thin. In that moment, Bavuma wasn't just facing a cricket ball traveling at 90 miles per hour. He was facing every headline that ever called him a quota player. He was facing every commentator who ever mocked his stature. He was facing the ghost of every failed South African campaign that came before. He was facing the very idea of the impossible. The ball left the bowler's hand. A red missile aimed at his hopes. It was full. It was fast. It swung late. It was, by all accounts, the perfect delivery to win a championship. And Temba Bavuma met it with the middle of his bat. There was no brute force. No angry heave. It was a stroke of pure timing. Of grace under unimaginable pressure. A gentle push that defied the violence of the moment. The ball raced across the manicured grass, a perfect line of red on green. It bisected two fielders who could only watch, their predatory crouch turning into statues of disbelief. The ball kissed the boundary rope. And then silence. A collective, global intake of breath. For a split second, the universe paused. And then it erupted. The roar from the South African contingent was a physical force, a wave of catharsis and joy that washed over the entire ground. His teammates stormed the field, a blur of green and yellow. They had done it. The unthinkable. The impossible. South Africa, a team of scrappers and doubters, were the champions of the world. Bavuma sank to his knees. He didn't scream. He didn't roar. He just closed his eyes, his head bowed. A picture of quiet, exhausted, profound vindication. The world's media went into a frenzy. Headlines were written in lightning. The miracle at Lord's. Bavuma's redemption. The Proteas conquer the world. Ticker tapes ran hot with superlatives. Pundits who had spent a career doubting him were now lining up to sing his praises, their hypocrisy lost in the joyous noise. It was a global celebration of a classic underdog story. But then, something strange happened. Something that didn't fit the narrative. Away from the champagne-soaked locker rooms and the glowing press conferences, a message appeared on social media. It came from an account belonging to Ibrahim Traoré, the football star, the pride of BurkinaFaso, a powerful striker who played for a top club in Europe, a man who had no conceivable connection to the world of Test cricket. The post was a picture of Bavuma, eyes closed, sinking to his knees on the Lord's pitch. But it was the caption that stopped everyone cold. It wasn't the usual, "Congratulations." It was different. It was personal. It was intimate. It read, "The world sees the trophy, but I remember the rain. They see a captain, but I remember a man. They celebrate the victory, but I celebrate the character that made it inevitable. Some victories are won on the field. The most important ones are won in the quiet alleys when no one is watching. Congratulations, my friend. You showed them what true strength looks like. You always have." The internet tilted its head. My friend. An alley? What was he talking about? News outlets, gossip blogs, sports forums, they all lit up. Traoré and Bavuma, the unlikely friendship. Speculation ran wild. Had they met at a charity event? A sponsor's dinner? Did they share an agent? No one could find a link. The mystery only deepened. It was a bizarre, beautiful, and utterly confusing postscript to an already incredible story. What debt did this Burkinabe giant of the football pitch owe to the diminutive giant of the cricket crease? To understand the answer, you can't look at the glittering scenes at Lord's. You have to go back. Back years. Back to a time of struggle and anonymity. You have to descend from the sunlit peak of victory into the cold, shadowed valley where character is not celebrated, but forged. Let's go back 5 years. Temba Bavuma was not the hero of Lord's. He was, in the eyes of many, a problem. He had been named the captain, a decision that was met with a storm of controversy. Not because he wasn't respected, but because his own performance with the bat was suffering. A captain, they screamed, must lead from the front. A captain must be scoring runs. And Temba wasn't. The pressure was inhuman. Every time he walked out to bat, it was a trial. You could see it in his face. The joy seemed to have been bled out of him, replaced by a grim, determined focus. He was carrying more than his bat. He was carrying the historical burden of being the first. In a country like South Africa, the first black African captain of the cricket team isn't just a sportsman. He's a political statement. A cultural icon. A target. Newspaper columns were brutal. Bavuma, the right man, the wrong time, asked one. Temba's tenuous tenure, read another. Anonymous sources from within the team management would leak stories of his self-doubt. Pundits on television would slow down his technique, frame by frame, pointing out flaws with a kind of clinical glee. They said his grip was wrong. His backlift was too low. They measured his height as if it were a character flaw. It was a death by 1,000 cuts, played out in the public square. Imagine that. Imagine your entire professional worth being debated daily by an entire country. Imagine knowing that millions see you as an experiment, a symbol, rather than just a man trying his best at a brutally difficult game. He rarely snapped. In press conferences, he was calm, measured. He would answer the same barbed questions over and over again. Temba, are you feeling the pressure? Temba, do you think you deserve your place in the side? He would absorb the blows, his voice never wavering. He was dignified. But you could see the cost in his eyes. The light was dimming. This is the moment where true character is revealed. Not when you're lifting a trophy, but when the world is trying to tear one from your grasp. If this resonates with you, if you understand that strength isn't about never falling but about how you carry yourself when you're being pushed to the ground, then join our community of story seekers. Let us know in the comments about a time you found strength in a quiet moment. Your story matters. Now travel north. Thousands of kilometers north, to BurkinaFaso. A landlocked nation of vibrant culture and immense spirit, but not a powerhouse of global sport. But it produces fighters. Dreamers. And one of those dreamers was a teenage boy named Ibrahim Traoré. He was big. He was strong. And he could kick a football like it owed him money. His dream was simple and yet colossal, to play professional football in Europe. To buy his mother a house. To make his country proud. To get to Europe, he first needed to get noticed. His journey took him to South Africa. Not to a glamorous, top-flight club, but to a small, gritty academy in the Western Cape. It was a trial. An opportunity. It was also a culture shock of epic proportions. He didn't speak the language well. The food was different. The style of football was different. And he was alone. A towering, powerful boy who felt utterly small and invisible. He was homesick. He would call his family, his voice thick with unshed tears, telling them everything was fine. It wasn't. On the training pitch, he struggled to adapt. He felt clumsy, so. The other boys, local kids who understood the rhythm of the place, seemed to dance around him. The coaches were impatient. They saw a raw talent, but one that was unrefined, lost. His confidence, once the bedrock of his identity, began to crumble. He started to believe the whispers he couldn't understand. He started to believe he wasn't good enough. The dream that had burned so brightly in Ouagadougou was now a flickering candle in the harsh South African wind. He was at a crossroads. Give up and go home, his spirit bruised, his dream dead. Or find something, anything, to hold on to. This is where our two stories, two journeys of quiet desperation, are about to collide. Not on a grand stage. Not in front of cameras or crowds. But in a place so insignificant, it doesn't even have a name. An alleyway. Behind a second-tier sports ground on the outskirts of Cape Town. The day was gray and miserable. A cold, persistent drizzle fell from the sky, the kind that seeps into your bones and chills your soul. For Ibrahim Traoré, it was the end of the line. He had just come from a meeting with the academy's head coach. The words were polite, but final. You have potential, son. But you're not ready. It's not a no, it's a not now. But Traoré knew what not now meant. It meant failure. It meant the long, shameful flight home. He had his small bag slung over his shoulder, containing nothing but a change of clothes and the wreckage of his ambition. He couldn't face going back to his small dorm room. So he walked. He walked until he found himself in a desolate service alley behind the main stadium. He slumped down onto a concrete step, the cold and damp seeping through his thin track pants. He didn't care. The misery outside was a perfect match for the storm inside him. He put his head in his hands, a giant of a boy, folded in on himself, made small by defeat. The dream was over. This was it. The taste of failure was metallic and bitter in his mouth. A car pulled into the alley, parking messily. A man got out. He was short, impeccably dressed in a team tracksuit. Traoré vaguely recognized him. He'd seen his face in the papers. It was the captain. The cricket captain. Bavuma. He looked agitated. He was on his phone, his voice low but tense. Traoré could tell he had just come from the press conference rooms inside the stadium. It was one of those days. One of those brutal inquisitions. As Bavuma paced, another man appeared at the end of the alley. A local. He was large, belligerent, and had clearly had too much to drink. He recognized Bavuma, and his face twisted into a mask of ugly entitlement. "Bavuma," he slurred, his voice echoing off the damp brick walls. "You call yourself a captain? You're a disgrace. A bloody disgrace to that shirt." Traoré tensed. He had seen this before. The ugly side of fandom. The fan got closer, jabbing a finger in Bavuma's direction. "You're only in the team because of your color. The quota. You're taking a spot from a better player. You have no shame." The words were poison darts. Each one aimed to wound, to diminish. Traoré, even in his own pit of despair, felt a surge of anger. He was bigger than this man. He could have stood up, intervened. But Bavuma held up a hand. Not to stop the man, but almost to calm the air itself. He ended his phone call. He turned his full attention to his abuser. His face was not angry. It was calm. Impossibly calm. He looked the man in the eye. He didn't shrink. He didn't puff out his chest. He just stood his ground, a small island of stillness in a sea of vitriol. "I hear you," Bavuma said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the drunken rant. "I hear your frustration. You love this team. I do too. And I am sorry that my performance has disappointed you." The fan was taken aback. He was prepared for a fight, for an argument. He wasn't prepared for acceptance. For dignity. "You should be angry," the man stammered. Bavuma gave a small, sad smile. "Anger won't help me score runs. And it won't help the team win. I know you are passionate. All I can promise you is that I will go back to the nets tomorrow, and I will work harder. That's the only answer I have." He didn't defend himself. He didn't make excuses. He didn't attack back. He simply absorbed the hatred and transmuted it into a quiet promise. The promise to himself. It was the most profound display of strength Lassina Traoré had ever witnessed. It wasn't the strength of muscles or aggression. It was the strength of a spirit that could not be broken, a dignity that could not be tarnished. The abusive fan was left speechless. He mumbled something, his drunken rage deflating like a punctured balloon. He turned and shuffled away, defeated not by anger, but by grace. Bavuma stood there for a moment, the weight of the encounter settling on him. He took a deep breath, and you could see the cost. You could see the exhaustion in his posture. And then he turned. And his eyes met Lassina Traoré's. For the first time, he noticed the big kid, huddled on the steps, trying to be invisible. He saw the desolation in his eyes. The shared language of defeat. Of being an outsider. Of being judged. He walked over. He wasn't a national captain anymore. He was just a man. He looked at Traoré, and then at the worn-out football boots peeking out of his bag. He didn't ask what was wrong. He already knew. He simply unscrewed the cap from his own water bottle and held it out. "It's a long road," Bavuma said softly in English. Just 4 words. Traoré looked up, confused. He took the bottle. Their fingers brushed. It was a simple, human connection. Bavuma nodded, a gesture of solidarity. "Don't let them tell you who you are. You're the only one who knows that. Keep going." And then he was gone. He got in his car and drove away, leaving Traoré alone in the quiet alley, the water bottle in his hand feeling as heavy and as precious as a gold trophy. Keep going. That moment was a seed. A tiny, powerful seed planted in the barren soil of Traoré's despair. He sat there for a long time, the rain washing over him. He thought about the captain. A man at the pinnacle of his sport, being torn apart, yet meeting that ugliness with a quiet grace that was almost shocking. He hadn't fought back. He had absorbed the blow and refused to be diminished by it. He had shown more strength in that quiet refusal than any snarling athlete Traoré had ever seen. And then that same man had turned and seen him. A nobody. A failure. And had offered him a moment of kindness. A moment of recognition. Something shifted inside Lassina Traoré. He looked at his bag. He thought of the flight home. And he thought of the captain's words. Keep going. He stood up. The rain was still falling, but it felt different now. It felt like a cleansing. He wasn't going home. He was going to find another trial. And another one after that. He would keep going. He would define himself not by the voices that said no, but by the quiet inner voice that, thanks to a stranger in an alley, had just been reawakened. That day was the turning point. Traoré didn't get a contract in South Africa. But he left the country with something far more valuable. A lesson in resilience. A new understanding of strength. He carried that lesson with him to Portugal, to the Netherlands, to the top leagues of Europe. Whenever he faced a setback, an injury, a loss of form, a racist chant from the crowd, he would think of Bavuma in that alley. He would remember that quiet, unshakable dignity. It became his armor. He learned to be calm under pressure. He learned that true confidence wasn't loud. It was the quiet, internal knowledge of your own worth, a worth that no one could give you and no one could take away. He became a star, a powerhouse, a leader in his own right. But he built his castle on the foundation of character he had witnessed on a rainy Tuesday in Cape Town. Meanwhile, Temba Bavuma's journey continued. The criticism didn't stop. Not for a long time. There were more failures, more doubts, more calls for him to be dropped or to step down. But he endured. He kept his promise. He worked harder. He honed his craft, not with anger, but with a relentless, quiet determination. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he started to win them over. Not with flashy centuries, at first, but with gutsy, match-saving innings. With clever, insightful captaincy. He built a team around him that reflected his own spirit, resilient, united, humble. A team that fought for each other. The world saw him as a survivor. But now, you see him through Traoré's eyes. You see that his calm demeanor wasn't a lack of passion, it was a conscious choice. A display of immense control. You understand that his leadership wasn't about shouting and pointing, it was about absorbing pressure so his teammates didn't have to. He was the shield. He was the calm eye of the storm. And that journey, that long, arduous road of quiet defiance, led him and his team all the way to Lord's. All the way to that final, victorious moment. When he hit that winning run, it wasn't just a victory over Australia. It was a victory over the years of doubt. A victory for every person who was ever told they weren't big enough, strong enough, or good enough. It was a victory for quiet dignity. A victory for the man in the alley. Which brings us back to the present. To the cryptic social media post that had the world buzzing. The pressure on Traoré to explain was immense. He had, with a few sentences, hijacked the narrative. He had placed a giant, intriguing question mark at the end of a fairy tale. 2 days after the final, he went live on his Instagram. Millions tuned in. They were expecting a simple story of a chance meeting. They got something else entirely. He sat in a simple room, no fancy backdrop. He just looked into the camera, and he spoke from the heart. The narrator's voice now takes on the tone of Traoré, filled with emotion and sincerity. A lot of people have been asking me about my message for Temba Bavuma. He began, his voice a low, melodic rumble. They ask, how do I know him? It's not a story about two famous sportsmen meeting. It is a story about a lifeline. 5 years ago, I was a boy. I was in South Africa, and my dream was dying. I had just been told I wasn't good enough. I was alone and I was broken. I was ready to quit football. Ready to go home and tell my family I had failed. I was sitting in the rain, feeling sorry for myself, when I saw something. I saw a man, a famous man, the captain of his country, being abused. A man was screaming in his face, saying the most hateful things. And I watched this captain. I watched Temba, and he did not fight back. He did not get angry. He just listened. And he responded with grace. With a strength I had never seen before. It was not the strength of a lion. It was the strength of a mountain. A mountain that the wind and the rain can beat against, but cannot move. He stood for his own dignity when no one else would. And then he looked at me. A nobody. A failed kid sitting on a dirty step. He saw my pain. He didn't know me from Adam. But he walked over to me. He gave me his water. And he told me to keep going. He will probably not even remember it. It was a small moment for him. For me, it was everything. It was the moment I decided I would not be broken. I decided that day that I would try to be like him. To have that kind of strength. The strength that is quiet. The strength that is humble. The strength that is unbeatable because it comes from inside. So when I saw him on his knees after winning that final, I did not see a man surprised by victory. I saw a man whose entire life, whose entire character, had led to that moment. He earned that trophy not just in that 5-day match, but in the thousands of days of quiet struggle that came before. He earned it in that alleyway. That is why I congratulated him. Not as one athlete to another, but as a man who owes him a debt I can never repay. He did not just show me how to be a better footballer. He showed me how to be a better man. The world has many heroes who shout. I think we need more heroes who listen. More heroes who stand tall by being humble. He's that hero. He has always been that hero. The narrator's voice returns to its original tone, now filled with a sense of resolution and awe. When the live feed ended, the internet was silent. The mystery was solved, but the story it revealed was more profound than anyone could have imagined. It was no longer about cricket or football. It was about the invisible threads of human connection that bind us together. It was about the echoes of our actions. A small act of kindness, offered by a man at his own low ebb to a stranger in a desolate alley, had rippled across time and continents. It had fueled the rise of a football superstar and, in turn, perfectly framed the triumph of a cricket captain. It proved that the moments that truly define us are rarely the ones that come with a trophy. They are the choices we make when no one is watching. Temba Bavuma's victory at Lord's is a monumental achievement in the history of sport. It will be remembered for generations. The trophy will sit in a cabinet in Johannesburg, gleaming under the lights. The headlines will be archived. But the true legacy of that championship? It isn't made of gold or paper. It is the story of two men, an alleyway, and the quiet, unshakable power of human dignity. It's a reminder that the loudest statement you can ever make is in how you carry yourself through the silence. The world is full of noise. It screams at you, tells you who you are, what you're worth. It celebrates the loud, the aggressive, the dominant. But this story, the story of Lucina and Temba, asks us to look for a different kind of strength. The strength in humility. The power in resilience. The victory in grace. If this story moved you, if it made you think, then its journey is not over. It needs to be shared. Share it with someone who needs to see what true leadership looks like, away from the podiums and the headlines. And if you believe that these are the stories that matter, the ones that uncover the soul behind the spectacle, then your journey with us is just beginning. Subscribe to this channel. Become an insider. Don't miss out on what we uncover next, because the most incredible stories are always the ones hidden in plain sight.